Hello and welcome to another episode of Tenerity Talks. I'm Vinay Tanna, Head of Marketing for Tenerity. Today we'll be discussing the theme of intelligent engagement and the role it plays in creating profitable loyalty. I'm joined today by Rachel Bicking, Chief Digital Officer of Tenerity. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, Vinay, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Rachel. And we're joined by Ben Stirling, Managing Director of Tenerity UK. Hey, Ben.
Hello, Vinay.
So, as I said at the top, we're discussing intelligent engagement and profitable loyalty. Intelligent engagement is probably a new term for our audience and our listeners, so it'd be great if we could kick off with a definition of what it means and what it is.
Absolutely, Vinay. I'll take this one and then let Ben jump in with any additional commentary. So breaking down intelligent engagement into the sum of its parts, right? The first piece of intelligent engagement is founded in intelligence. So when we think about intelligent engagement, it means by definition that we are using machine learning and analytic functions to deliver the timing, tone, and context for the way we communicate with consumers. As a quick example, instead of selecting or targeting consumers based on their demographics or saying, if you leave something in your cart, we are going to send an email 48 hours later. We are using machine learning and a model score to define the appropriate timeliness for any type of communication or engagement. And what this delivers is not just hyper personalization, so it's on each individual consumer's time frame and their own personal journey, but the adaptability to engage over time in a way that resonates with that consumer and is constantly learning versus setting up that customer journey in advance and simply adhering to the plan as stated. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, big bullet points there is machine learning based and focused on the customer first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I'd add to that, Vinay, was just, I think that is the powerful outcome, because I think in today's world, with the consumers and the brands we speak to, it's like, it's an attention game, right? You're vying and battling for attention, and it's the most valuable commodity. So, and a trackable one now, right? So I think that's the power of all this. And so, if you're using or gaining attention by using, as Rachel said, triggers and notifications, you've got to then have the right content, and it's got to be in the right channel. And of course, it's got to be at the right time. And my very simple example is always that, if a solution can understand that I buy salad on a Tuesday for myself, but pretty much every Friday night at a guaranteed time, my kids hassle me to the point where I buy them pizza from a very well-known vendor. If you understand that and you know how I do it and how I buy it, it's very easy to drive notifications that trigger the behavior and reward me for doing so.
And that's very interesting. And from what you've both described, there seems there's a number of factors at play, and there's a lot of things happening. And Rachel, you touched upon AI and machine learning. So what would you say are the sort of core components of intelligent engagement? What brings it all together? What are the areas that potentially listeners should be looking at when they're looking at utilizing intelligent engagement?
Yeah, so from my perspective, we look at this funnel, if you will, from a customer lens. So the first is awareness, which is what we just discussed, the timeliness, the tone, all those great pieces that we'll bring together using machine learning. But the second piece is the appeal. So if you get the time right and you get the tone right, you need to make sure that the appeal to a consumer is the right level, which means that if you only have 15 offers in your catalog, you're going to be very limited in the way that you're able to appeal to a larger consumer base. It's not, I think, logical that having a smaller offer base would only allow you to appeal to a smaller consumer base. Not everybody likes the same things. So by increasing your content catalog or your number of offers, benefits, information, context to the thousands, to the hundreds of thousands, what then we have the confidence in is the ability to understand a specific offer that will resonate with every single individual in your audience if we do it at the right time with the right message and all those great functions. And I think often that's overlooked, that there's a lot of focus on the timing and the trigger and a lot less focus on the actual appeal of the content. And without that very large content universe, the likelihood of finding something that appeals to everyone is minimal.
Okay, and so what's coming out very clearly in this is there's a vast amount of data being pulled together from various sources, and there's data at a customer level, there's data at an offer level, there's data at a communications level, and so then the challenge then becomes, and we read a lot about this in analyst reports and industry reports, is how do organizations and brands navigate the complex data privacy law world? How do you understand your customers in a compliant way, and how do you bring together those three elements to deliver this effectively?
We're very data privacy conservative, and for a bunch of reasons. I think first, it's the right thing to do for compliance and risk, and we need to be aware that those governing parties are working in a way that is compliant with the requests of consumers. And I think we should all kind of remember that as we think through how we use data, and to make sure we're using it in a way that a consumer would agree with. So the easiest and simplest way to do that is to simply ask, which means developing the appropriate value exchange. So if I am willing to give up, and when I say give up, offer my preferences and the things I like, my transaction history, what restaurants I've visited recently, anything about myself, about my family, about my way of life, or just simply about my opinions, what am I getting in return? And again, returning to kind of the previous conversation on content catalog, the more incentives and opportunities to have that broad-based number of benefits and exclusives, we now have this kind of bartering capability where we can say, hey, this is something you value. We value your opinion. If we can trade these two pieces and the value exchange is appropriate, then there's absolutely zero concern about privacy, because both parties agree to that level of exchange of data, because we're getting the things that we want in return.
If we move into talking about the benefits for the business, you're engaging your customers better, you're creating triggers, and you're communicating and engaging with them in an intelligent way. What are some of the outcomes that you see businesses wanting to drive utilizing intelligent engagement? We touched upon this concept of profitable loyalty in the introduction. Ben, if possible, could you give us some more context into how intelligent engagement drives profitable loyalty?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's really interesting is, we've talked a lot there about the breadth of content. And of course, breadth is key because it allows you to personalize and curate that experience for an individual. And then when you've created that and you've used the right channel to do the right notifications, because you've gained, as we've mentioned, the right permissions there, you can then really start to get a behavior that comes out of that. So, habitual behaviors, which can be generated from people visiting, like I gave my example on Friday night. It's pretty clear. I go to the same place to get my same voucher to go and buy my same pizza. And, you can do that through prize draws and instant wins. But then you've got the transactional side of things. So transactional would be typically point of sale discounts. So it could be cash back, or it could be coupon and things like that. And that's where you're going to find some form of commissionable element available. So what we're doing is essentially recognizing the right customer for the right offer for the right merchant, and pairing them together through intelligence and data. And then when we're able to do that, obviously a commission is generated. So when that's generated, that means that we're able to share that with partners, and they're able to put that, if you like, revenue channel back into their program. I always say that everybody loves loyalty until they have to pay for it. So by being able to generate revenue through usage with relevancy and high perceived value for a customer, you're able to create what is like a fund. And then ultimately, that gives you a very powerful ability to use that for what might be emotive content. So something that is really special, something that is really meaningful for me as a consumer. If you know what I like and what I'm interested in, and for example, very simply, within that data exchange, if we're able to determine that it's my birthday, then as I'm going into work and as I pass through the same station, which I do most days, to be able to serve up a notification that says, Ben, it's your birthday, you're an outstandingly epic customer of ours for 3 years, go and get yourself a free coffee with this QR code at the station. That type of emotive engagement would, drive something very different and a very different feeling towards the brand than just a transactional discount or something like that. And so that's really the way, the idea is to build what I call this beehive of activity and engagement. And once you have that, you're really able to then look at that from a business perspective and say, so what do we do with that? Now we have won this most valuable of commodities, attention. What do we do with it? Well, we now understand our customers better. We understand a bit more about their behavior and their transactional behavior and how obviously they feel about us. So how do we then cross-sell, upsell, increase the value of not only the relationship we have with them today, but what that could look like in the future. And I think that's where most brands probably struggle, is they have a lot of data and insight, but pulling that all together into something meaningful and actionable across their entire business. So from the products they serve and making sure that that's at the right time and moving away from that approach, which is just show them more of it until they buy, but doing it in a more intelligent manner means you get better results. So, I think that there's a lot behind that that's valuable for a business. Being able to scale up past 10 offers is very difficult for an organization unless you hire a very big team. So, having a broad range of content that's kind of sourced in via a single kind of channel is very beneficial. And then being able to kind of tailor what content people see at what time to create the right behavior obviously becomes a far more meaningful, engaging environment. And therefore, once you've got that, you can do something with it that's valuable to your business in the sense of, as I say, upselling, cross-selling, or just driving usage and making commission through the exchange with merchants.
And then, you talked about, and you mentioned brands driving behaviors, whether it's habitual, transactional, or emotional. Is there a nuance between, the types of brands and the verticals who would look to use intelligent engagement to drive profitable loyalty? I'm thinking, would an insurer or a bank have the same type of application and the use of intelligent engagement as a telco, for example, or a CPG? How are there nuances in the delivery and the application? Are there different outcomes that they're trying to drive, and how can they do that with intelligent engagement?
Yeah, so I'll take that one first, and I think I just start with business piece, which is any organization that fundamentally has a customer base, which is a majority of them, whether you're in utilities, financials, insurance, doesn't really matter. It's the fact that you have an audience and a customer base, typically then dependent on the product you provide or the service, determines how frequently they would visit. So a bank may have a higher frequency because obviously you check your account more than you would perhaps check your annual car insurance, but that doesn't limit you into what is possible. And I think that's where it becomes really exciting because, a lot of brands are very focused on themselves. I'll give you one quick example. I met a very large financial institution and they told me they did an amazing job of customer communications, to which point I responded by saying, I am actually a customer, and the only email I've received this year was one to tell me that my interest on my account was going to be pretty much zero. So that wasn't for me what I would determine as a great relationship. And I kind of use the analogy of dating, and I think that a lot of brands talk about themselves. If I went on a first date and I talked about myself the entire date, my probability of a second date is pretty low. If you're a retailer, you can think of that as transactions. But if I went on my first date and I talked about them and I understood what was interesting for them, then my probability of a second date or transaction goes up considerably. So when we understand more about the customers and bring in this breadth of content that allows us to have more of a meaningful conversation with things that they are interested in, it naturally increases their interest in interacting with that brand in general. There are a number of companies in the UK, I will give credit to people like Meerkat Movies, who've turned a one-time a year transaction for insurance into something that has an incredibly high repeat usage rate because of their focus on a content type, which happens to be movies and now dining out. So I think there's a huge potential to just increase the conversation by being interested in more things than your business and more things that the customer is interested in. And then that opens up obviously a whole host of possibilities about your ability to then sell them additional products. In a world of highly commoditized products like utility providers, where a mobile phone can be bought on eBay, Amazon, or directly at one of the O2 or Vodafone, you've really got to have a compelling reason for someone to be a customer outside of your core product. You've got to be a part of the 99% of the time they're not looking at your product. And if you can achieve that, you create a compelling reason for them to stay with you, which typically means you can increase your lifetime value. You don't have to give away as much margin when it comes to renewal, because they're more interested in the benefits you're providing them to their lifestyle outside of your core product.
And just to take that one level further, I think there's, some excitement and enthusiasm that is important to bring in on that emotional side of discovery, of fun, of engagement, right? Of how we think about that customer, not just in that one single transaction and what we're offering, but really how we're offering it or how anyone is offering it. One, of course, cost of doing business is how easy is it to use, but the second piece is how fun is it? So, Ben mentioned prize draws. That makes a standard piece of content a lot more fun and engaging. I think you take it one step further, and I think it's relatively easy to say, okay, Ben likes coffee, let's give him coffee. But what might be more exciting is for both the merchant and the consumer is to say, oh, you like coffee? Have you tried, matcha tea? And here's either an offer for a matcha tea latte or an offer for matcha tea powder that you can make at home pending, your goals. So that element of discovery and fun really can't be underrated in the way that we can produce enthusiasm and therefore not just return, but also advocacy to the customer base.
So if I'm hearing this right, intelligent engagement has benefits for both the customer by creating experiences that they value, need, and enjoy, which drives them to engage with the brand more often and more frequently. That in turn enables the brand to build a better picture of the customer and to serve them with better, more targeted experiences and offers, create that into additional revenue opportunities, whether it's directly from the program and the content or into cross-selling and upselling. So it seems that there's a vast array of objectives being fulfilled. In terms of the conversations that you're having out there with brands and businesses, are there any real world examples that you can share where this has been used successfully and has seen positive results for the brand?
Yeah, so I can take this one, and so a good example would be a utility provider that we've been working with as a proof of concept, and I think overcoming key challenges for an organization, which we've touched on already, are things like, how do you scale a solution past a certain point, and how do you do that without applying significant amounts of resource? I think there's other elements around, how do you digitize a customer base? Because fundamentally that has a cost reduction saving for your business if you're reducing things like call center interactions and things like that, and you're able to do those through digital channels. And then simply, how do you increase engagement overall? And so the examples we've already touched on today around a smaller content pool is what we saw for the proof of concept. And it's like when you're providing as Rachel said, a small subset of offers, it's quite hard to make that appealing and relevant for a very broad, for a consumer who's one, relatively complex, but also a very broad customer base who are all incredibly different. And I think that's what's been most exciting, is where organizations have existing programs, but it isn't meeting the expectations that they would require as a business. And then they look to say, how do we scale this without increasing our operational cost and our headcount, but get all the benefits of bringing all of our information and data together to really understand what people are touching, what they're using, liking, sharing, transacting, and then improve our ability to drive more value back to the organization. And that's what we've been able to do recently in a proof of concept, which was incredibly exciting, and measure everything from the clicks of consumers seeing offers through emails to them landing in the offer environment, where they're then presented with personalized offers based on their interest, and therefore checking the clicks and the usage of those offers, and actually seeing the outcomes and results of that being significantly higher than pre proof of concept run rates. So that's been really exciting, because that allows an organization, when you do something like a proof of concept, to really say, okay, we had an expectation from the original integration. We then have run a proof of concept to win, if you like, confidence back across the business. And these are the outcomes of what that could look like if we did it like this. And that's amazing, because when you help an organization, prove a business case as to what they know is possible, but they're not getting the results on, it's very exciting for both us and for the organization themselves.
And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Just like to thank Ben and Rachel for joining. Ben and Rachel, any final words?
Yeah, I think thank you for the opportunity, Vinay. I'm always excited to talk about this topic. And I truly believe, as we continue to move toward not just saying the words of being customer first and customer driven and customer obsessed, but understanding that to execute at that level, you need machine learning and automation plus the content breadth. We'll find that we'll actually be able to execute on that outcome.
That's great. And I would just add something very simple, which is I've always liked the, philosophy, which is you give to receive. And I think in an environment where you can give value and provide value to a customer and be a part of their lifestyle, you typically will then receive a more valuable customer. And I think that's what we seek to achieve.